Is Minnesota closing the achievement gap? Here's a press release from the Minnesota Department of Education, dated September 1, 2015. Nearly two-thirds of Minnesota schools are on track to reduce achievement gaps in reading and math by 50% by the year 2017. This makes you wonder, if most individual schools are closing the gap, what's happening to the overall gap? Let's take a look. These graphs show the state's gaps in reading and math achievement over the last 5 years. Not much improvement. Now, if most of our schools are making strong moves to close the gap, then why hasn't the overall gap closed? It turns out that the press release is deceiving. Let's see why. Here's a scatter plot that looks at 2015 math results for 11th graders. Each circle represents a real Minnesota high school. The big red circle happens to be Watertown-Mayer. Placement from left to right shows how many students took the math test. Placement from top to bottom shows the portion of students who were proficient. The 2015 math target for 11th graders is about 68% proficiency. This applies to every high school in Minnesota. Let's show this target with a horizontal line. Every school below this line failed its initial proficiency test. Watertown-Mayer is below the line, so it initially failed. But maybe the flu bug was going around on test day. Maybe the students would score above the line if they had a second chance. So we give them the benefit of the doubt by applying a margin of error. Let's add a curve to show how this works. Now, the actual margin of error curve isn't really this simple, but what we're trying to do here is simply to illustrate a concept. Now, let's take a closer look at the part of the graph that includes Watertown-Mayer. This graph is divided into 3 sections. Schools in the top section met their initial proficiency goal. Schools in the middle section, like Watertown-Mayer, are given the benefit of the doubt. And schools in the bottom section scored too low to get the benefit of the doubt. Now here's the essence of our message. The press release about closing the gap is based on 2 false assumptions. First, it assumes that every school in the middle section deserves the benefit of the doubt. Second, it assumes that every school in the top section really belongs where it is. This is kind of like saying that every candidate within Donald Trump's margin of error is actually beating Trump. But that's not how margins of error really work. To see how many schools are actually meeting their target, it's best to ignore the margins of error. We should go back to this. And then take away the margin of error curve. Quite simply, the best estimate of the portion of schools where the 11th graders are meeting the target is nothing more or less than the portion of dots that are above the horizontal line. No adjustments are necessary. Now, some of the black dots that are below the line really belong above the line, but some that are above the line should really be below the line. These things balance out. The true nature of our overall achievement gap is actually simple. In fact, we've already seen it. Let's take a second look. The gaps have not been closing. Now, please note that this presentation uses a simplified version of Minnesota's accountability system. The full margin of error calculation is shown in a file hidden deep within the depths of the Department of Education website that looks like this. We're not going to go into the detail of this spreadsheet here because we're just trying to illustrate a concept. But to sense the full complexity of our accountability system, Consider this blackboard. Whoa. Can't we please make things simpler?